Will and I have worked with hundreds of clients moving from places like California, Texas, Chicago, Florida, and we see buyers make the same missteps time and time again. If you are looking to move to Colorado, today we're going to break down the top 5 mistakes we see out-of-state buyers make when they're relocating to the state, and we're going to show you exactly how to avoid them. Now, the first mistake we see people make early on in the process is judging a suburb by its spot on the map. People may look at Denver on the map and then the surrounding suburbs and can completely misjudge commute times from one suburb to Denver or one suburb to the airport. Oftentimes, these assumptions that they're making just by looking at the map are completely wrong. Due to the fact that a lot of you guys are coming from California or Chicago or Texas, where things can take a really long time to get from point A to point B, you may look at a map of the Denver area and assume that the same thing is going to be applied here. And because the Denver metro area is so spread out, things can look a lot further away than they actually are. And really just without having the local knowledge of how the highway systems work and where these suburban neighborhoods are located in proximity to highways, you can make all sorts of assumptions. So that's why it's very, very important when you guys are looking at any of these surrounding suburbs or cities in the Denver metro area, it's very important that you use a tool like Google Maps or Waze, or even Apple Maps will do this now, to where you can pre-plan trips and you can look at what a trip from one city to Denver will be at 9 a.m. compared to 2 p.m. compared to 5 or 6 p.m. So if there's somewhere where you're needing to stay centrally focused, like where your office is going to be, or if you're making frequent trips to the airport or a certain school, it is very important that you use these features on the maps to actually estimate what the real-time traffic is going to be in those areas. Now, let me share a quick story about a client we were working with last spring who was moving from the Bay Area. They were scarred from living out there because a 10-mile trip could easily take over an hour. When they were moving to Colorado, they were looking for good space, beautiful nature, lots of trails to go hike and bike ride and things like that, and good schools. So naturally, we suggested Castle Rock. Now, they took one look at the map and they were like, hey, absolutely not. It's way too far. It's like 35 miles to downtown Denver. And basically, they had completely written off the entire South Denver metro area just because of the distance in miles. Now, we were looking at some places that were downtown, but it didn't have the views that they wanted. It didn't have the space that they wanted. It didn't have the schools that they wanted. So I said, hey guys, humor me. We've got the time. Let's just jump in the car. Let's cruise down to Castle Rock. Let me show you one community down there. And then if you don't like it, I owe you lunch, right? So we had the time for it, and I was going to take them to lunch anyway. But we headed down to Castle Rock and we literally got there in 30 minutes. Now, given this was the middle of the day, so there was no traffic or anything like that, but even with traffic, guys, oftentimes you're looking at maybe 45 minutes, provided there's no accidents or anything like that. Once we got down there, they were almost quite literally in shock as far as how fast the commute was. And Castle Rock is one of those special places where, because it is so centrally located next to the highway, you're typically 5 to maybe 8 minutes to get from your neighborhood to the actual highway, and then you're just shooting straight up to Denver. So really what this did by doing this little experiment, and you could have done this also just by mapping the distances in real time, right? Based on different times of day. You're going to learn that 30 miles in Denver is not the same as 30 miles in the Bay Area or Chicago or any of these other places that you guys might be coming from. This is very important because this is going to open up so many more possibilities for you guys when you're moving out here, because 30 miles in Colorado is not 30 miles in California. So some of our major communities like Castle Rock, Parker, Highlands Ranch, Aurora, even up north, Broomfield, Thornton, all these places were developed with highways in mind. In any of these places, you're going to see very close proximity to our major highways, whether it's I-25 running north-south, I-70 running east-west. Based on these cities, close proximity to the highways, guys, it's going to make your commute times to downtown Denver and Denver International Airport, DIA, a lot quicker. Now, just to be clear, this doesn't mean that all drives from all communities are a breeze. For example, if you're going to be working up in Boulder, I wouldn't necessarily tell you it's a good idea to live down in Castle Rock or Southeast Aurora, and vice versa, right? Even with close proximity to highways, you can really spend a lot of time on the highway if you're living that far away. Again, coming back to my first point about just taking the time to use some map tools, testing the commute times from one neighborhood to wherever it is that you're going to to need to be working or going to school or traveling to, it's very important to try those at some different times of day to get real-time commutes. Now, the next mistake we see is people focusing only on Denver. A lot of times when you're thinking about moving to Colorado, you may jump on Zillow and type in Denver, and that's the only thing you really know to type in there. Maybe you're going to see $900,000 home prices and get some sticker shock. Maybe you're going to see just some really older, almost historic homes, and that's going to turn you off because you're looking for something newer with an open floor plan. Maybe you're going to see that the school rankings aren't what you want them to be. Well, it's very important, guys, that you don't get this Denver tunnel vision, because when people say they live in Denver, in Colorado, they really mean they live in Denver or 30 to 40 minutes outside of Denver. Like myself personally, I live 40 minutes outside of Denver in Elizabeth, which is mostly rural city southeast of Denver. When people ask where I live, I tell them Denver. It's just sort of the way that us locals talk, right? But in reality, when people say they're moving to Denver, you've got Denver right in the middle, center of the clock, and then you've got a 30 to 40 minute radius outside of Denver that comprises what we would call the Denver metro area. And that honestly is where we see most of our clients end up moving. But if you don't really understand the way that the city is laid out and all our surrounding cities and suburbs and master plan communities and things like that, you may think that Denver is not the place for you, which is definitely not the case. So the truth is, most of you guys are moving here because you're looking for a certain lifestyle. Most of the clients that we sit and meet with and jump on Zoom calls with from our YouTube channel aren't moving here because they have to or they need to. They're moving here because they've come here on vacation a couple times. They've got some friend or family members that live out here and they just can't stop thinking about Colorado. It's the nature, it's the scenery, it's the activities, it's the schools. It's really just quality of life and lifestyle that is bringing the majority of you to Colorado. Oftentimes, this is one of the biggest secrets about moving here, is that the lifestyle you're looking for is actually going to be found in the suburbs and not necessarily in the city of Denver. So for example, if you're looking for the best master plan communities, great places to raise a family and meet new neighbors and really get ingrained in part of the community, you're going to be looking at places like Parker, Castle Rock, Highlands Ranch, Sterling Ranch, maybe up on the northwest side as far as like Broomfield or Westminster or Southeast Aurora. These master plan communities are amazing. In all of these places, you are still in Colorado, so you do still get a lot of the Colorado scenery that you're looking for. And if you're even a little bit further out east, like let's say Southeast Aurora, the Rocky Mountains are still the Rocky Mountains. So you are going to see mountains. Maybe you don't have a ton of scenery within your neighborhood, but you can still see the Rockies, especially depending on the way that your lot is laid out and the type of home that you get. So don't think that you need to live right in Denver, because you're probably not going to find those sort of amenities. Well, actually, I can promise you, you're not going to find those amenities in these Denver neighborhoods. You're going to want to be on the outside. Now, if you're looking for a mountain town vibe, like let's say your priority is being within 10 minutes of some legit hiking trails or mountain biking trails, you're going to want to look at places like Morrison, Golden, Boulder, even the Ken Carl area, which is West Side Littleton, even Sterling Ranch, which is a master plan community, but you're less than 10 minutes away from Roxborough State Park, which has some beautiful hiking and trails. Now, if you're looking for a brand new home in one of these master plan communities, you're primarily going to want to be looking up north near Broomfield, Erie, Thornton, those sort of places north of Denver, or down south near Castle Rock, or now further out east in East Aurora, such as Aurora Highlands. You're not going to have that much luck on the west side if you're looking for brand new homes, but again, just think north, south, or east. Now, one of the best tips I can give you guys is as you're exploring some of these different areas, it is important to see what a dollar will get you in Golden, what that same dollar is going to get you down in Castle Rock, and then what that same dollar is going to get you in Denver or Southeast Aurora, because all of these areas are going to have different types of homes and styles that are going to be out there. Like for example, in Golden, you're not going to find a whole ton of new builds, but you are going to be very close to the mountains, very close to, hiking and trails and things like that. And it's got a great sort of old downtown historic vibe, right? A lot of your money is going to be going towards that, and maybe you have a slightly older home. But if you just want to go to Golden on the weekends and you don't need all that stuff on your day-to-day life, maybe you want a newer home with a bigger yard and some views, and Castle Rock is going to be a great spot for you. So As you're exploring all these areas, just see how far your price point will get you in each of these areas, and that will also help you narrow it down based on your guys' priorities. Now, mistake number 3 that we see people make is not understanding the current market conditions or making assumptions about current market conditions. Now, we all know right now that interest rates are still a little bit high. It is technically in some neighborhoods a buyer's market compared to a seller's market. We do have a lot more inventory available right now, and you are starting to see homes sit on the market longer, which for the most part means that there are a ton of opportunities for buyers out there right now where you can oftentimes get homes that are under asking price, or we can get concessions from a seller in order to buy down your interest rate so that you can get a lower monthly payment. But the mistake that we see people make is assuming that these sort of market conditions are going to apply to any and every home that's out here. Now, yes, there are a vast majority of homes that are going to fit in the box that I just described. However, if there are homes on the market that have what I call a variety of X factors. So an X factor with the home might be it backs up to some beautiful open space with beautiful mountain views. Maybe an X factor is it sits right at the end of a beautiful cul-de-sac and the backyard is just big and amazing. Or let's say the inside is like so well updated, or it's a model home from a builder and inside just feels like Chip and Joanna Gaines themselves designed that home, and the updates inside and the finishes that the sellers did are just absolutely stunning and gorgeous. That's all going to be X factors. What happens when you take any one of these X factors and combine it with another one? So let's say you have the Chip and Joanna Gaines home that sits in a cul-de-sac and has mountain views. That home is going to sell like crazy. You might even have multiple offers on those homes. So if you're finding homes like that, don't think that you can sit and wait, take a couple weeks to sit on it and decide to make an offer, because that home is going to get snatched up despite what the market conditions are showing. And trust me, you don't want to find that beautiful home that is perfect for you, that just takes your breath away on a Friday night. Think that you have time to necessarily think about it or sit on it for a day or two, because someone else might come in and grab that home from you. Because if it's taking your breath away, it's most likely going to be taking someone else's breath away. So not to rush you guys into buying a home, but just keep in mind when you're finding a home that checks all those boxes, even despite our slower market right now, it is still imperative to be able to pull the trigger on a house fairly quickly as far as making an offer. One thing I want to note here is that in Colorado, once you get a house under contract, it then becomes very buyer friendly, as in you're not forced to buy the home. You have different checkpoints throughout the contract itself, where now we can kind of like catch our breath, regroup, and now we get to do our due diligence on the home. We've got 7 to 10 day inspection period. You've got another termination deadline to where if you don't like what your homeowner's insurance is coming back at, or you're running into some roadblocks regarding insurance, we can terminate based off of that. You're gonna have another checkpoint for reviewing HOA documents. If there's any deal breakers in the HOA documents, we can terminate because of that. So we have multiple checkpoints throughout our contract period where you do have time to catch your breath, do your due diligence, and then if it ends up not being the home for you, we can terminate, get any earnest money back, and move on and find something else. But the important part is just not taking too much time onto that decision period between seeing the home that you love and then making an offer. Because after we get a contract accepted, then we have all the time to do our due diligence and make sure it is indeed the perfect home for you. Now, mistake number 4 is not budgeting for Colorado specific costs. Now, when you're moving here, when you're factoring in your budget and your home payment and things like that, that's not the only thing that you need to take into consideration when you're factoring in all your finances. Now, let's start off with some good news. Property tax in Colorado is one of the lowest in the country. Depending on how old or new the neighborhood is, you're going to see some fluctuation. But on the low end, I would estimate in a pre-existing, well-established neighborhood, you might see property taxes as low as 0.5 or 0.45%. Meaning, if you're buying a $1 million home in that area, your property taxes might be $5,000 a year. Now, on the flip side, do expect to pay higher property taxes if you're buying in a new build area. High end is going to be anywhere from 1 to maybe 1.2%. But even in that case, if you're buying a $1 million home in a new build community, your property tax payment might be $10,000. And I know a lot of you guys, especially if you're coming from Texas, that is going to seem like a steal. Now, we do have a flat rate state income tax, whereas you don't have that in Texas. But at the end of the day, you're definitely going to be saving money on taxes because we have such good property tax out here. Now, homeowners insurance is another factor. We don't have, any crazy flood insurance out here or anything like that, or fire insurance, unless you're going to be living like deep in the mountains of Boulder or something like that, where you are at an increased fire danger risk. But we do have a lot of hail out here. So it's not a matter of if your home gets hit by hail, it's a matter of when your home gets hit by hail. So when you are setting up your homeowner's insurance, you're going to want to make sure that you have a fairly low deductible, and ultimately, this ends up typically being a good thing, at least the way I look at it, because when it comes to roofs in Colorado, you should never really be paying out of pocket for an entire roof. Sometime within a 5 to 10 year period, you're going to be getting hail on your home that causes enough damage on the roof to where insurance will replace it for just the cost of your deductible. It's one thing where it's important to know the factors about homeowners insurance, but frankly, a lot of those can be used to your advantage. Another expense to factor in is going to be HOA payments. A lot, as in most of our suburban communities, are going to be in some sort of HOA. Now, I've heard some horror stories from people moving out here where the HOA in their previous town or in their previous neighborhood was just on them about everything, and they couldn't leave their trash can out for an extra night without getting a fine from the HOA.
Ah, novelty mailbox. That's a violation. Oh yeah, that's a violation. Wind chimes. Gross. 3 violation.
For the most part, guys, we don't have those types of HOAs out here. They are massive corporate-owned HOAs, and you're not going to find this like board of retirees that live in the neighborhood that are literally just going around and trying to find problems with homes. For the most part, the HOAs out here are just to make sure that we maintain the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. As in, you probably don't want your neighbor leaving their big RV parked in the street in front of your house, or their big boat, or the neighbor that paints their house pink. And now you got to look at that all the time. So for the most part, we see our HOAs out here are reasonable and practical and logical for the most part. As far as fees, you might be looking at anywhere from $50 a month to potentially $200 a month on the very high end. But I would say most of them are going to fall in probably the $50 to $75 range. And that is going to include things like sewer, trash, recycling, common area grounds maintenance. Those are the typical inclusions, in addition to the pool, community, clubhouse, those sort of things. And lastly, let's talk transportation. If you are coming here and you just have 2-wheel drive vehicles, it's not an immediate necessity that you upgrade to a 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, but I would definitely say within the first year or two of you living here, you're definitely going to want to make that switch. You will see when you come out here, a lot of people do have all-wheel drive vehicles, like Subarus are very popular. You're going to find mostly SUVs that have 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive capabilities, and then you'll see a bunch of trucks as well. Again, it's not something that you're going to need before you move out here, but I would definitely plan on budgeting in an all-wheel drive vehicle upgrade as soon as possible when you're moving here to Colorado. Now, finally, the last mistake we see people make is flying out here and expecting to buy a home in a weekend. This has happened. It happens quite a bit, actually. We call this the fly in on Friday and bye-bye Sunday trip. Again, this can happen, but it puts a lot of pressure on you, and it can lead to maybe some rush decisions and just unnecessary stress. So I want to break down the most efficient and stress-free way that we recommend people typically come out here and buy a house. So it's all going to start off with us jumping on a Zoom call, which if you guys see the number down below, give us a phone call, text message, or email. And we'd love to do what we call the digital discovery phase, right? That's where we're going to jump on a one-on-one, just quick 30-minute Zoom call with you guys. This is where we find out what you guys are looking for, what the most important things are for you, jump on a map, and we go over these specific cities and communities and neighborhoods that we think would be the best fit for you. Okay. This is the digital discovery phase. From there, a lot of you guys do like coming out for an exploratory trip. During this trip, we do recommend that you guys take 1 or 2 days on the front end where you guys can just self-explore. And what we'll do is we'll game plan with you what areas you should go explore. We'll even give recommendations on where we think certain good hotels would be for you guys to stay at that are centrally located. And you guys can take a couple days and go just drive around a lot of these neighborhoods. I also recommend to people, if you're trying to sort of learn the types of people that are in neighborhoods, one of the best things you can do is grab a Starbucks, sit in your car, and go park at the grocery store. The grocery store is that one central hub where people of all ages, demographics, wherever the people are living in that community are going to be coming to. So it's a real good way for you to start getting a feel for the types of people that live in a community. Is it older? Is it younger? Is it a lot of families? Is it a lot of young professionals? The grocery store is a central hub for everybody. So just be that person that sits in your car and just go people watch for a little bit. Sounds funny, sounds kind of creepy-ish, but it's a really good technique to really learn, right? Now, when you're doing this self-exploration, the mission here is process of elimination. Not necessarily to find the exact perfect place that's going to work for you, but to find places that aren't necessarily your vibe. And then for the second half of your trip, this is then where we can meet up in person and we can go look at some homes that are in the areas that you know you love. The reason we like doing this is we don't want to show you homes first, have you fall in love with a home, but you're just not in love with the area. So area first, and then once we have the areas dialed in, then the home is actually the easy part. When we go and show you guys these homes, a lot of times people are finding ones that work for them and their timeline is working out in a way where it makes sense to make a decision then, but you're not necessarily pressured on it because you're familiar with the area, you spent some time driving around. We also have people that are reaching out where we're meeting up and showing homes, but maybe they're 3 months out from needing to move here, 6 months out from needing to actually move into a place. What's awesome about this now is now you know the areas that are perfect for you. You fly back home, but now that you know the areas well, we can then dive into virtual tours as we get closer to your timeline. We'll go out, we'll do live FaceTime tours for you and video walkthroughs and things like that. And we're giving you our real personal input on these places. And we're showing you things like, hey, what's behind the backyard? What are the neighbors' homes like, right? To really give you a good sense of what's going on in the immediate area, not just giving you a virtual tour of the home. Coming back to what I said earlier about our buyer process, how it gets very buyer friendly after we're already under contract. Once people know they like the area, and then the virtual tour is awesome and the house is great, that's often enough confidence for them to be able to make an offer without needing to see the home in person. But don't stress out. This doesn't mean you're buying the home sight unseen. It literally just means we're making an offer and essentially we're trying to get control of the home by getting the home under contract. Then once we've won an offer and we get the home under contract, people are then flying back out during that inspection period to actually go and tour the home in person. And then if it ends up not being the right home for you, guess what? We send in our termination, get your earnest money back, move on to something else, ideally while you're still in town, and we can look at some things that are, in person while you're in town. So we're making the most out of that trip. But this is a great hybrid way of not buying a house sight unseen, because that can be a little crazy, but at the same time, being quick and efficient with very deliberate trips that are planned out here to where you're not flying out to Colorado to not buy a home, right? You're not flying out here to find a home that you see online and you go and tour it in person, but it's just not the home for you. So this ends up being a really good hybrid model for the majority of our clients. So again, don't be pressured to fly out here and buy a home in a weekend. Also, don't feel pressured to buy a home sight unseen because that's just crazy, right? So the hybrid model, exploratory trip, right? First of all, digital discovery through our Zoom call, then an exploratory trip to really get a good feel for the areas. Then the next trip is once we have a house actually under contract for you, where you can then come out, see it, feel it, smell it, all the important things. And then if that ends up being the right home for you, amazing. Let's do our inspections, move through the rest of the contract, and find you your dream home. Now, I hope you guys found this video informative. And like I said before, we've helped hundreds of clients through this process. So we really have this whole system very, very dialed down. And again, these are the top 5 mistakes and how to avoid them. So if you guys are interested, one thing we've put together for you guys is a relocation guide, which you can find in the description box below. You can download that guide, and that's going to tell you a ton of things about moving to Colorado. And we even highlighted a ton of local areas. So within that relocation guide, you're going to find a lot of area guides as well, which are going to point out some of the top communities and neighborhoods that work for a lot of our clients. So with that being said, guys, we appreciate you watching this video. We'll see you next week.